Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Athlete Cafe.
Hi guys, I'm Carly, former collegiate lacrosse player.
I'm Abby, former gymnast and collegiate dancer.
I'm Frances, former collegiate track athlete.
And I'm Emily, former collegiate volleyball player. Let's get into today's topics and see what's on the menu.
Large cappuccino. Orders up.
All right, guys, welcome back. Happy 2024.
Yay. I've only written 2023 on every single piece of paper
I
I've had
know,
over the
literally
last
same.
6 days.
I know, all my dates, it takes, I remember that back in school. It took me like 2 months to get used to it. It's the same thing still. I feel like I've been talking about 2024 for so long though, so it doesn't seem like as hefty of a transition.
That's true.
I don't know if that makes sense, but just thinking forward and thinking of things. But yeah, happy 2024. Hopefully everyone had a wonderful holiday season and a wonderful new year. We're excited to be back.
Yes, and we were just talking about it, but Emily has very exciting news to share.
Yes.
I did get engaged over Christmas. Very crazy, very exciting.
So exciting.
Super happy. It hasn't, I don't think it's
Davey's excited too.
He's so happy.
so excited.
Oh God, he just bombed.
No, but super excited. I don't think it's like you just said it. I don't think it's set in yet quite,
Yeah.
but definitely
Takes a minute.
starting off the new year with a lot of big whirlwind. So
So
Yay.
exciting.
So exciting.
things. Anybody else have anything crazy to share from the holidays or New Year?
No.
Not really.
It was
Mine were
Frances'
boring.
birthday.
It was.
She went on a little birthday trip.
Yep, yeah. I went to Hawken Hills for the first time. A little solo trip in the woods.
Beautiful.
It was nice.
How old are you now? 27?
Oh,
8? Am I allowed to ask?
27.
7.
Yeah.
I feel like these, the late 20s, it's just like
It's all a blur, yeah.
Yeah.
They all seem like the same age.
It's funny though, because my aunts, when I went to go see them, they were like, "Oh, how old are you now?" And I was like, 21, and they believed me.
Oh no.
And then my cousin's like, "Wait, no, I'm turning 21."
Yeah, that's
You're
not
older than
possible.
me." Yeah.
Okay, that's so funny.
That's really funny.
Yeah, I feel like you do get to a point, especially with family. It's like you obviously are maturing, but it's not enough to see a significant difference. So and the time flies so fast. Oh my gosh, that's funny though.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Actually, I love that.
I think that's one of my favorite things is especially I feel like when we get new clients or I don't know if it ever comes up, but just sometimes my kids will be like, "How old are you?"
Yeah.
And I'll
I
be
always
like,
make them guess.
"What do you
Same.
think?"
Yeah.
Take a guess, and I'll be like, "I'm out of college." I kind of give them some pointers because I've literally had kids be like, Are you 15?"
Yeah.
I get that a lot.
yeah.
You guys, you're in 8th
I'm
grade.
like, does that even make sense? Yeah. Just think a little.
think about that
Does
one.
that make
Critical
any
thinking
sense?
skills.
Do I look like I'm 2 years older than you?
Probably not. I mean,
They're
I
always
guess
like, you
maybe,
look so
but-
young. And I think they mean it as you're not old enough to do this kind of thing. I'm like, that's going to come in handy someday.
Right.
It'll be a good thing one of these days that I look significantly younger than I am.
It was funny though, because the one time, they, my kids were guessing from 18, and then they're like, "You're 30," and I'm like, "That's a big jump."
Different difference. Well, because I feel like for kids, 20s are a weird, a blur too for them because they're like, what is being 20? What, you look
I
young
also
still.
I feel that way
Right,
as a
same.
20-something-year-old.
And,
I
and
also feel that way.
so many people are in different stages of their life in their 20s.
Yes.
So
Yeah, it can
feel
be
like-
very confusing.
Emily was just saying, she's like, I feel like my whole Instagram is either people having babies or people living
Getting
their best
married?
life and
there's no
down.
in between.
Yep.
Yeah, it's weird.
A lot of it's a weird 20s are a weird time nowadays, I feel like.
Definitely.
But all good things, all fun things. Everyone's on their own
exciting.
path. But cool. So I think, like we said in our last episode, we touched on the idea of just starting to think about goals and just thinking about things just with the new year insight of how to approach it in a way that best fits you. And so no pressure on setting goals, making sure you're picking goals that are relevant and important to you. So that's what we talked about in the last episode. And then we wanted to kind of expand on that today and talk a little more deeper about goal setting itself. So I guess just that same reminder of, hopefully if you've thought about them already, or hopefully you're kind of on the path now of okay, where am I at this year? What's going to be kind of going on athletically? What are your seasons going to look like this year? What are some things you're hoping to achieve maybe that hopefully you've thought about all those things. So I think the first thing that we want to touch on a little bit is the idea of the different like types of goals. And so hopefully these are all things that you guys know about if you're listening, but just kind of hearing it all in one place and breaking it down will be helpful. But we always like when we talk about goals, and I'm sure we all do it differently, but understanding like what types of goals are most important to you. So everyone, I always like to start with dream goals. You know, what are those things are probably 3 to 5 plus years out, like they're far away. And I think everybody has dream goals, but I think as amazing as they are, and it's so fun to dream, like everyone should have dream goals. But I do think oftentimes dream goals can be very frustrating for people. I've actually had some clients who get like, oh my gosh, it's not happening fast enough. Like it still feels so far away. Like I have a couple kids right now who are like in their junior year of high school and they've been dreaming about playing in college for the last 3 or 4 years. And they're like starting recruiting and like all they think about when they make mistakes is like, am I going to get recruited? Am I going to get the scholarship? And so I think a lot of times just like understanding what your dream goals are and just making sure you're being realistic with, okay, the timeline is there. It is far away. That's okay. And just recognizing, and hopefully as we go through the rest of the types, just like understanding how you can build the steps to get there.
I feel like dream goals were the ones that I always thought about as an athlete, which I didn't term them as dream goals. I didn't know that was maybe like the phrase for it, but I feel like it was when I was, young or in high school or middle school, it was like, what do you want to do when you grow up? Or like, what do you want to, and I'm like, I want to play lacrosse in college, or I want to do this when I'm older. Like, that's how I view dream goals, like kind of for not for younger kids, but like when you're younger, you think about that. And then once you get closer, it's more frustrating because you're like, is this going to happen?
Right.
Like, am I getting closer to this dream of mine? Do I still want this dream?
Right.
Because you change, right? So it's just interesting.
And sometimes those dream goals, like they can be so exciting, they can be so motivating, they can be a little bit scary, but they can also feel a little overwhelming because you're like, great, I want to achieve that, but like, what do I need to be doing day in and day out to work towards it? And it's hard sometimes to feel like you're getting closer to it if you don't have other types of goals, like we'll talk about in a second, to like help you realize, okay, I am getting closer. There are things that I'm actively doing every single day to get me towards those dream goals so that it can help it not feel as far away, or just have a better understanding of like where you are on the journey to those dream goals.
And we use I use personally, I know some of us have used it too, just this graphic of like a ladder, right?
Yeah.
And that dream goal is at the very top of the ladder. And as we go through the other types, it's going to be like, boom,
step
boom,
by
boom,
step.
the steps that you need to go through and the different goals that you can use in order to achieve that, if that's still what you want. So dream goals, top of the ladder.
Top of the ladder dream goals, and maybe like take a second and write down what your dream goals have been or what they are. And like, maybe I think it's a good question to ask of like, why are these important to me? Why is this a dream goal for me? Is it still relevant to my life? Like sometimes you just tell yourself this stuff for years and it just gets ingrained and we change.
Which it's crazy because when we had Tim Mack on the podcast, he talked about like his dream goal, his like way far out of reach goal was gold in Athens, and he had that for 4 years. And so every time I think of dream goals, I'm like, oh, that was a good, like he what was it? It was his email
Address.
and so like it was something that he saw every day. And so I think like when you're thinking of like that kind of dream goal, I think what he said about it was like really cool, of like seeing it every day, and that's kind of like those beginning steps to like building.
Yeah, right? Like it's kind of like Emily just said, like write it down, right? Like put it out into the universe. I think a lot of times with those dream goals, we get nervous to like speak them out loud or admit that that's actually what we want. And I think Tim was very much on that. He was like, I was afraid to say it out loud. Like I didn't want people to like ask me what my email address was because I didn't want to have to explain to them that's what I wanted.
Right.
But once you put them down on paper, once you tell somebody about them, once you put it out into the world, that is such the first step to like knowing that that's the path you're going down. And they can always change. Your goals can always change, those dream goals. But I think that writing it down piece is so critical to start kind of the goal setting and
Most definitely.
process of the whole thing.
Most definitely. So I think always starting with dream goals is great. And then working down, the next is long-term goals, which are like 1 year, 1 to 2 years ish maybe. And just being able to see like, okay, more or less like where you're at right now. Maybe you just finished a season and you're thinking, okay, for next season, like what did I do well this season? What do I want to work on? Like, do I have other sports coming up? Am I going into an off season where I can train differently? Do I need to take rest? It's more of like that whole year picture. So kind of like, you know, everyone likes to use the new year to look at that, but I think it's more seasonal for people depending on your sport, and being able to say, okay, like what are some things month to month or quarter to quarter that I need to be focusing on to help me get back to, okay, next season I'm prepared to do X, Y, or Z. So I think long-term goals are really good too, and I think those can be similarly just as daunting as dream goals, just because a year feels like a long time too, even though it feels like time goes so fast. But I think it's really important to like set those just standards month by month or whatever feels best for you. Is it 3 months, 6 months, whatever, just to help you stay accountable and just help you see, okay, how am I growing? You know, did anything happen in the meantime? How do I need to adjust to get back to where I want to be for next tryouts or whatever it is? So I feel like long-term goals are like the next good step to be thinking about after those dream goals. And then kind of from there, short-term goals or season goals, I like to say, those are about 3 to 6 months ahead of time, or the next 3 to 6 months. So these I feel like we talk about the most.
I would agree with that.
Probably with our athletes, I'd say. And it depends on, you know, when we start working with our athletes. Like, is it the beginning of their season? Is it mid-season? Whatever. But I think this is a lot of like what most athletes can relate to, just because it's happening more real time, and you can check the boxes, like you can kind of like see it happening in a quicker time span. But I think those season long goals are definitely good to see, like, okay, I made the team, tryouts are over. What is my role going to be? What do I want my role to be? Do I want to acquire a certain position or a starting position? Do I want to work on certain skills this year? And that way you have practice, you have games or events, like you can do those things day to day. So I think that's what, to me, all of my athletes like the most. And I feel like that's when coaches bring up goal setting, and, you know, it's when goals are most talked about is at the beginning of those seasons. So I guess, how do you guys feel like you've gone through season goals with kids? Is that most helpful for them, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times when I do goal setting, it's like SMART goal setting, when we talk about like the season or like that short-term kind of time span. And so like being able to not only like identify what their goal is, but like what are the steps to get there,
Right.
I think is really helpful for a lot of athletes, because then over the next 2 months or a couple weeks, like they can start like checking the box of like, okay, I know I'm doing this in practice every day, I know I'm doing this, and then they can start seeing like, oh, I see the progress now. And so like having that plan and having it framed out, and not just having like, oh, I want to be a starter. Right. Like, and so like getting kind of into the weeds of that, I feel like helps a lot of athletes.
Yeah, and I definitely want to go through SMART goals kind of once we finish the types, because I think different opinions on SMART goals if you know what they are, but I think if once we go through it, it'll be helpful to kind of help guide goal setting in more of that way. And SMART goals can be for long-term, for dream goals, for season goals, but I think it definitely makes the most sense with season-long goals or short-term goals. But yeah, I think those I would say are the most commonly used types of goals. And then the last one is process or daily goals. And these can kind of stem from those season-long goals, and you can make them they're generally more specific, but I think the difference with daily or process goals are they're things that you can accomplish each day. Like, it's not going to take a ton of time, or it's not going to be, it should challenge you, and it's going to be difficult, but like I always say, in outside of a sport realm, like drinking more water, trying to go to bed early, trying to make your bed every morning, like something that you can achieve daily and continue to do, where it's not like a huge task, but it's going to make you feel good completing it.
Yeah, and these are the ones where I always say, like, put numbers to it, which getting to SMART goals, we'll go over why that's important in a second. But, you know, I think this is where specifically for my gymnast, I think like we start with the season goals, and then these process goals or these daily goals is like really where we get into the nitty gritty. And I don't know if that's because like I kind of revert back sometimes to like my actual coaching, where I'm like, okay, what are the drills? What are the stations? What are the conditioning, whatever it might be. And Carly and I just were at a gymnastics facility kind of last week. Was that just last week?
Yeah.
Couldn't
last
tell.
week.
Yeah. Oh my God. That seems like 4 days, like 4 years ago at this point. But, we kind of talked about this, like, what do I need to accomplish? What do I want to accomplish this season? And then what can I actually do every single day in practice, right? There's this one skill that I know I really want to get for this season. It'll help me, qualify for regionals. It'll help me qualify for nationals, whatever that might be, which might be my long-term goal. I need to get this skill. Okay, what are the corrections my coaches are giving me? I need to push through my legs more. Great, let me go do 3 sets of 10 squat jumps every single day. Let me go work specific drills to work on that part of the skill. And I find that with my athletes, like, that makes them feel so in control and so empowered to be like, it's not so daunting when I can break it down and actually, like, cross it off my list. I said I do 3 sets of 10 on beam today. And I did that. And that, no matter how the skill went, I did that part of it. And they feel like, okay, I am making progress towards this season goal, long-term goal, dream goal.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing I stress, because I've been actually talking with this with, I feel like, a bunch of my athletes, I don't know if just the beginning of the year, but like, I always stress that if it's something that you're trying to work towards or you're trying to change for yourself, like, I feel like I've talked with my basketball kids more often, but it's like, I don't even care if your goal is to, like, start shooting more threes. Like, I want to be more offensively aggressive. Like, I just care about you taking the shots.
Yeah.
Take 2 shots a game. That's it. Start small, start easy. And then, because 2 or 3 shots of threes might seem daunting right now because you're not doing it. And I don't even care if you make the baskets. That's not about it. Like, you got to start somewhere where you're doing it and, like, you feel that rhythm and you're getting used to it in a game setting. And then, okay, once you feel comfortable with it and you're shooting a certain amount that you want, then we can focus more on, like, the consistency of actually making the baskets. So I think sometimes it's even breaking down those of, like, okay, it's just getting yourself to do it or just, like, checking off, okay, I did that, and now, like, how can I continue down those steps a little bit too, which all my athletes hate, because especially basketball players, they just want to make all the baskets, and I'm like, it's just about doing it.
There's a couple of steps before then.
But I think those process goals, I agree with you, it's good to check them off, it's good to, like, feel accomplished, and I think so many athletes, like, miss that day to day, especially when you're constantly looking at that dream goal and it's not happened yet type of thing. So those are all of them, right? I didn't miss any.
I think so.
Weekly, kind of, but, like, in between process or daily to short term. It's like weekly if you want to break it down even smaller a little bit.
You can get as nitty gritty and as many layers and rungs of the ladder as you want.
Monthly, weekly, anything that you want that makes sense for your sport or makes sense for you. And again, it's just making it specific to you and making it so you feel like you're, like, getting through the process that you need to.
I do also know, and I know we reference these a lot, but if you can't really picture these ladder rungs that we're talking about on our website, I know we have a really great goal setting workbook that walks you through what those ladder steps look like and lays it all out and gives examples and definitions too. So if you need a visual, because I'm such a visual learner, if you need one, go to our website, sharpenskillstraining.com, and it's in there, and you'll be able to pull up what we're talking about.
And we even have some sport-specific, like, goal-setting packets that, like, break down positions, break down all of that, and allow you to set goals specifically.
Because it's different for each sport, right? Gymnastics and lacrosse, the way you set goals are just going to look differently.
Very different. Okay, cool. So those are all the different types of goals, so hopefully keeping those in mind. But kind of now I feel like the next most important thing is talking about just the SMART goal piece of it, just because it encompasses so many different facets of what goal setting is and to make it most effective. So like I said, I think people have mixed reviews about SMART goals, if you've ever heard of them. SMART is an acronym for just different words to help set goals, to make them specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, or relevant, and then timely. So we like to do this a lot when, like I said, more or less seasonal goals, but then I think breaking them down into process goals, you kind of do that within the SMART goal setting. So I think for anybody listening, and if you have a goal in mind, like becoming a starter, maybe we use that as an example.
I think that's a great example.
So I think always starting off with, like, a very broad example of what your goal is. So become a starter. That's great, fantastic, and that's amazing, but how the heck do we do that? Like, what are the actual tangible things? How are you going to work towards that? You might kind of know in your head, but you don't run practice, you don't, determine practice times or play time or any of that. So how can we find your controllables? Because that's another big thing with goal setting is what you can control. So I think first is making it specific. So in thinking of want to become a starter, I want to become a starter, answering who, what, when, where, how. Maybe I want to become a starter by the midseason. I want to become a starting outside hitter on my JV team, or become, I don't even know, starting whatever, or
midfielder on varsity.
Right.
certain like
Yeah,
not the same.
like maybe for high school gymnastics, like I want to be in the top 3 scores.
There
Right?
you go.
I want my score for this event to count in the team all around.
there we go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, same with track. Like I want to be on the travel team, so I score points for the team.
Beautiful.
So, yeah.
So making it as specific as possible, and just answering those who, what, when, where, how, why type questions, and then from there answering, okay, like in how am I going to do this? I think the how is probably the most important. So like I would think in trying to make this like how you're going to do it, things that you already do day to day. Like don't make it crazy. I always tell my kids, like, think about practice, think about your training. Like you don't have to go above and beyond to achieve this. Like think about how you can be intentional with the stuff that you do already. So maybe it's in practice, like I want to become the starting outside hitter on my volleyball team. I'm going to really focus on, my quick approach and my arm swing when we do drills at practice, or when we're lifting, I'm going to try and really go hard on my plyometrics and really try and increase my vertical. All those different things. Maybe I'll try and communicate with my teammates better on the court to be more of a leader, to get that starting spot. It can be things that you already have, because oftentimes, unless you feel like there's things that you need to add, that's fine. But oftentimes being so busy and so already involved, especially if you're in a season, going out and doing some extra stuff may not be manageable and attainable.
I always say too, like if you don't know how, have a conversation with your coach if you feel comfortable. Like they will tell you like, hey, I need you to work on this aspect of your game, this aspect, and then you have the answer for yourself, right? Or if you feel like you need to work on these things, still have that conversation. Maybe it's the coach makes that final decision, right? So maybe it would be good to hear from them like, okay, we need these specific things to get a little better, or we're just looking from you and that's the missing piece to the puzzle.
And it's also just good for a coach to know that you have that initiative, right? Like this is what I want. I want to set goals for myself, and I want to figure out like what are the steps that I need to do to get here. Like as a coach, like having an athlete come up to you like that, it's like, okay, cool, you're serious about this. Like that initiative is amazing.
Yeah, great point.
No, I agree with that.
Do like that a lot. Yeah, so figuring out, just making that goal more specific, finding the how of what that's going to look like. And then next is making it measurable. So I think this can be, depending on the goals that kids set, this can be a little more difficult. Like I think more of the starting spot, it's like, okay, do I need to get to, for volleyball, do I need to get to a certain hitting percentage? Do I need to have a certain amount of play time? Do I need to, like, how can you find ways to track or measure? And it could be like, maybe I wasn't starting in the beginning of the season. And so like, as the season went on, like I got more and more play time. Like, is there any way that you can track this progress and like measure just the success that you're seeing?
Pretty much.
There might not be, like, if you think of a goal, like, okay, I'm trying to like lose 15 pounds. That's easy to track. Like you can see the weight coming off. You can track like what you're doing each day. So it's kind of more goal dependent, but I definitely think depending on the goal, it's more of a struggle to do the measurables, but try your best to find something just to like track it and like hold yourself accountable.
I agree with that.
Right. Yeah. And so then the next one is making it attainable. So this one's kind of always cracks me up because it's just in the way that I go through it. It's like it's basically finding all of the resources and things that you need in order to be successful. So like in order to work on, getting a starting spot, like what things do I need? I'm going to need a volleyball court. I'm going to need a volleyball. I'm going to need practice time. I'm going to need other teammates probably to talk to and to help me work through stuff. My coaches. Who are some people you need to talk to? Is there anything else you need to learn more about? I'm trying to think if there's any other questions. Just thinking about what really makes this attainable. Like, what are some other tools and things you need?
This is usually when I have that conversation of like, start to tell people about your goals, right? Get your support system. Make sure you're talking to your parents that this is what I want to achieve. I might need you to bring me to practice 15 minutes early so I can attain this, right?
Yes.
Like I might need to ask mom and dad or my grown-ups about, can I do one private lesson? Can I, look for a couple of extra resources? Is there any resources online that, I can try to find? Maybe I don't know how to find those, and that's where a teammate or a coach or a parent comes into play to help you find those things too, right? That's where that communication piece, I think, helps make it really attainable when you're not trying to do it by yourself.
And I think it goes back to you. It's like sometimes we just don't even know how to start or like what to do. So it's like, I think the support system is a great point to add of just like using those resources, getting all of the feedback you need, and just advocating for what you feel you need and what you want. Like, sometimes asking for a private, it's really hard to do, but it might be what you need, and it might make that extra move. So I think making it attainable is one of the bigger parts that sometimes gets overlooked when doing SMART goals.
Yeah.
But the next one, probably my favorite question, making it realistic or making it relevant. And I almost wish it was like the first step.
It should be.
I know. I get that why it's not until,
make a new acronym maybe. But this is basically like, why is this goal important to you? Yeah. Like, why is this realistic? Why is this relevant to your life? And I think this one always hits home with a lot of kids of like, why do you want a starting spot? So if that is your goal, why is that important to you? And sometimes I've had kids be like, I don't know. It's just what I've always wanted. It's just what I've always thought. And like, but then I have some kids who are like, I know I've worked hard. I know I deserve this. I know that this is going to get me closer to my dream goal of playing in college or in high school or whatever it is. I know I want to push myself and see what I'm made of. Like, it really just gives you a good, like, debrief of like, okay, why am I even working towards this? Why am I putting all this time and effort into doing this? Which is, again, what we kind of started off with in our last episode. But I think that making it relevant and just understanding why is like one of my favorite questions to ask kids when they're setting goals.
I have also gotten to this point of kind of SMART goal setting, and we get to that, and like they kind of get this like deer in the headlights, and they're like, oh, like this is not the goal that I want, or like that's where we start to say like, is this all based in some expectation that you have felt? And like, you can kind of see like this shocked look on their face. I have an athlete that I'm working with right now. She's, a pretty high level athlete. She is definitely kind of in that elite level. And we were kind of going through this, and she time and time again has kind of come back to this one where she's not totally ready to just like clear the entire worksheet and start back over, but like that R is starting to get a little challenging for her, and she's not sure if it's relevant to her anymore. She's not sure if that's a realistic thing she wants to keep pursuing. So we haven't totally scratched it and kind of started over, but I have done that many times with athletes where they're like, wait a minute, this is not the goal. This is and they work through those first couple of letters and they feel so excited and they're so ready for it, and then we get to that one and it's kind of like oh man, like And I think that's why it's so helpful to go through it sometimes, because sometimes you get to that step and you're like, oh man, I'm totally not where I thought I was on this one.
Yeah, and I've had some of my athletes, like when we get to why it's relevant, well, I should do it this season. It's like, I should hit this time. I'm like,
That's not a goal.
Right, and then it gets into all of the expectation stuff. But yeah, definitely having that passion for your goals is what helps you pursue them.
Right. And I think sometimes there is like that little bit of like, okay, I know what I'm capable of, so I probably should be getting that time, but it's like, you still have to make sure that it is relevant to what you want to do, and it's not based on anyone else's expectations.
Keyword you, not your parents. My favorite is, well, my parents think I should be a starter. They think I deserve to start. And I'm like, well, do you think that? Do you want to?
Is that going to make any difference?
So funny.
So I think to me that one is my favorite, and that one's almost the most important. And I do agree. And there's nothing wrong if you get to that step and you're like, well, we need to start over. Like, that's
I know
okay.
It's really funny whenever I do this, either, if I'm doing it online, I'm like, I warned them. I said, we can erase this and start over. Or there's times where I've done this in person and they don't know it, but I always bring 2 copies. Yeah. Right. So like I will do it. And I was doing this with a little one. We got to the R. She was like, nope. And I was like, great, I have a blank one. Let's start over. And she was like, how did you know that was going to happen? I said, I didn't know. I was just prepared in case it did.
Yeah. And it's totally okay. And I think sometimes it is just a harder reality of like, dang, I've been telling myself this for however long and gotta revamp the wheel here and see what we need to do, and that's okay
all the time.
Totally fine. But if you do get past that and you still find it relevant, the last part of the SMART goals is making it timely. So and to me this is, all the steps are important, but a lot of times having those deadlines that aren't already set in stone. So like, the end of the season, that's going to happen no matter what. Like the year's going to end and you're going to get to next year's tryouts. Like some stuff is already naturally going to happen, but I think like holding yourself accountable and creating certain timelines within yourself to know, okay, am I hitting these benchmarks? Am I where I need to be? Do I need to reevaluate? So we always like to have a halfway measurement and then obviously like a final date of when you'd like to achieve this or like when you'd like to see changes. Because I know sometimes like a long-term goal, you're not going to see that over a season or dream goal, you're not going to see that over like a short period of time. But like to have benchmarks. And so I always have my kids too be like, okay, if it's a season, like is there a certain tournament you want to aim towards? Is there a certain game that you want to kind of have this skill like being worked on or like feeling better for? So sometimes that's helpful. And even at that time, like maybe that halfway measurement is like way far off than what you had originally thought. That's okay. But that's when you can say, okay, I'm here, I'm hitting this time. Like, do I need to adjust? And that's okay too. But I think setting some of those dates just to hold you accountable can be super important.
Yeah. And the way I kind of like frame it to my athletes is like, it doesn't mean that you've failed if you don't reach it by that date. It just means you have to be flexible and adjust. But also like putting that deadline or that date on it, it's like in school. If a teacher gives you homework and never tells you when to turn it in, are you going to do that homework?
Absolutely.
Right? Like, no, it's like to hold you accountable for it.
Right. And like, I've actually used that analogy too. And then like, if you get to that deadline and you're like, I know I'm really close, but I could use an extra day, you go ask for an extension, right? Or if you like, I'm way off, I'm not even close, that's where you're like, okay, one of these steps didn't really line up. I need to look at this and reevaluate now versus not having that progress point to, and then you get to the end of the season, you're like, what even happened?
Yeah.
I think those 2 points are like the main like theme and main difference between expectations and goals. Because if you don't reach it, like, oh, I should score 3 points in this game and you don't do that, then you did fail. Like technically you did fail, and that's a lot of pressure, and that makes you feel bad about yourself. Versus goals like, I want to try to get 3 points in this game, and if I don't, let's adjust for next game. Let's try 2 points next game. And you adjust, you have that freedom, you have that flexibility to make it more like realistic for you to get to, and then recreate a new goal to keep having you move forward and keep having you change rather than just stay on the bottom trying to reach that bar, right?
Yeah. And I like that idea. I don't know if I've ever thought about it like this, but you kind of get to that time that you set for yourself and you didn't quite achieve it, or you're a little bit off, right? Go back and was my goal not specific enough? Right? Was it not as measurable? Am I having a hard time knowing if I was successful because I didn't really put any boundaries around it? Was it maybe a little unattainable, right? Was it not super realistic, right? When you get to that kind of T part of it and it's not lining up, which piece of the other letters might have been a little bit off? How can I go back and redo this kind of step-by-step setting? And then it's one of those, I didn't fail, right? I just didn't have necessarily the correct or the absolute best building blocks and
it's a working doc.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep changing it.
It's a working doc. I love that.
And keep adjusting, because if you don't, you're just going to stay in the same spot, right? Like, because even if you do achieve it, like all your SMART was correct, you achieved it, do it again. What's your next goal? Right? Keep going. Keep changing. Keep building.
Yeah, I love that. And I think breaking it down in that way, like I've had so many athletes who I pull out that worksheet and they're like,
we do these in school
and to be honest,
all the time.
I have like a negative stigma to it, but they are so good. Like I feel like I just wasn't taught them in the right way.
Yes, I was
or
never
walked
taught
through them in the right way.
Or never did them for goals that I cared about.
I've had so many kids be like, we have to do this in school, and I don't actually like it. I just put down whatever I think I need to get the assignment over with.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay,
that was me in my master's program. I literally searched SMART goals today in my Google Drive, and it was from my master's program. And I was like, I remember just totally like writing whatever. It was just like, let me just get it this time.
The assignment done with. But that's where like when it's your sport, when it's your passion, like it does change a little bit. So if you're one of those people that are like, I'm literally rolling my eyes at you all right now because I hate SMART goals. My teachers make me do them. I think they're pointless. Do it for something you actually find that you care about more, right? Sorry to all the math teachers out there or English teachers, whoever it is, right? They probably don't care that much. But when it comes to your sport and your passion and your hobby, it's going to be a little bit different and can kind of change your perspective.
Say almost 95% of my kids have been like, this was good. Like
Yes.
I really
Oh,
liked
yeah.
this, and they use it. A couple of them are like, this was okay. I've never had like a bad review on it, but more or less, I'd say majority of them all are like, wow, that was way better than I thought it would be type of thing.
And they all say after, they're like, now I like have a plan, and they're
Yes.
like, it's not just some vague goal of like this
Yes.
is what I want to achieve. It's like now it's all laid out, and they're like, oh yeah, this is perfect. Like I can check
I
my
can actually
progress and
do
I can
this,
actually
yeah.
work
It's
towards
fun.
it.
And you actually see like what you're doing every day. Because
Right.
sometimes you just go through the motion at practice. You don't really give yourself enough credit for what you're doing, and you write it all out like that, and you're like, dang, I'm actually doing a lot of stuff towards my goal, and I don't need to do a lot extra, so it takes that pressure off yourself too.
And that's where that awareness, and we talk about this all the time, like just being aware of it can be the biggest game changer, right? Just knowing what's actually happening, giving yourself credit where credit is due, and not necessarily adding in a ton more things, right? It can be so beneficial, that awareness piece of things.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully between just knowing those types of goals, understanding for you what's most important for goal setting for you in general, and then understanding how to apply SMART goals to whatever that type of goal is for you, hopefully this was helpful today. I think the last thing is just understanding that like goal setting does so many more things. I know it's time consuming to a point, and hopefully you do it at the beginning and then it's set for you going forward, but goal setting helps boost your confidence. You feel like you know what's going on. You feel like you have a good plan. It makes you feel prepared. It helps you feel less stressed going into what I need to work on, what I need to do. It helps manage your expectations. It helps just give you a plan going forward. So there's so many benefits that goal setting can do. You just got to give it a little bit of a chance and try it out. But I think, again, the biggest thing just to wrap up is making sure that you're managing the expectations versus the goals and making sure you understand that difference. We have a whole podcast on expectations that we did a few episodes ago, so go listen to that if you haven't, just to understand what expectations are, and then hopefully that can help you shift to understanding, okay, like these SMART goals and these dream long-term, short-term, daily goals are the staircase, and you're not just jumping for that bar that we've talked about with expectations. But anything else?
No, I think
Yeah,
that was
that's
good.
good.
I think
I
that
think
was
that was
really
pretty
good.
in depth. Yeah.
Nice.
And if you do still need help, like Abby said, our resources on our website are
Yes.
gold.
Yeah,
It'll-
like that goal setting one in particular, like I know we're all
Yes.
just really proud of that one because we think it is such an important topic, and it can be really challenging sometimes to do it on your own, right? So there's so many resources out there. I think we have a really great one. So you know,
I think I can put the link specifically in the
In the show notes?
In the show notes. So
Sounds
I think I
fancy.
can put the link in there. I'll try and do that. But if not, just go to our website and look up resources. We have a ton in there as well anyway. Cool.
Awesome.
Well, happy goal setting. Have fun. Good luck. Good luck with whatever season or the year that you're embarking on. And we will see you next time.
Yeah.
bye.
Bye.
If you like what you're listening to, be sure to follow the Athlete Cafe on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. You can find us wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts.